Good afternoon from Cape Town. We're here at GSMA-Africa's launch of the South African Digital Economy Report 2024. And I'm here together with John Omo, Secretary General of African Telecommunications Union. Hello, nice to meet you.
Pleasure, pleasure.
With the digital economy set up to reach up to 20% of GDP by 2025 alone in South Africa, how do you see telecoms driving this growth?
I think thanks a lot for the question. The telecoms industry has largely been seen as a service industry, but we are integrating telecoms into various facets of our economy, be it agriculture, be it health, be it education, be it transportation. And so we estimate that quite a large facet of our lives will be affected by how we integrate ICTs into various facets of our life, of our lives. And so telecoms and ICTs are bound to play a lot more important role in terms of our economic development, not just here in South Africa, but in Africa as a whole.
All right. So when we see Africa as a whole, and we have many samples of countries where we see that taxation and policies are kind of problematic for digital growth, where I sometimes feel that telecoms are more perceived as a revenue stream instead of actually some industry who could unlock economical potential.
Right. The unfortunate thing, I think, is the nature of how the industry developed as a revenue earning stream for governments, whether in spectrum allocation. Most of the spectrum that were allocated to the private sector was through an auction where the highest bidder then gets the resource for purposes of providing communication services. And that came with its own challenges, because the higher the price, that of spectrum or a resource, for example, is passed on to the consumer. And so that tradition has been carried through, because while other facets of our economy are struggling, the ICT industry is doing a lot better. And so governments still see it as a revenue earning, opportunity to get revenues. And so we see, unfortunately, some crazy, if I can use that word, taxation regimes where governments try to get as much as possible, either by way of income tax on imported products, or excise duty, or sometimes value-added tax on certain services, platforms, for example. And this has had the effect of discouraging investment in certain ICT products and services in Africa. That has held back in terms of how Africa grows in terms of connectivity.
So what do you think, what policy changes would make the biggest impact for telecoms in Africa?
One, governments in Africa need to realize that this is, quite apart from this being the cash cow, it is the engine that will drive our economies. And so less of taxation, so that you concentrate on the gains that come from various economic activities, I think is the way to go, so that we tax less, more so at the point of entry, whether a new product or a new service or a new operator coming into the market. So the less you tax, I think, the more that operator is encouraged to roll out, to invest in products and services, and you get a lot more revenue as government from economies of scale that come with large-scale investment.
All right. If you look across the continent, bridging the digital divide remains still one of our biggest challenges.
Right.
What do you think are the main challenges to finally overcome it? Not only talk, to really, let's say, start with some meaningful actions.
Yeah, the challenges are myriad, depending on which part of the continent or even within countries, the challenges are quite myriad. We have the nature of the terrain of the African continent and the settlement patterns, for example, where people do not live in clusters but live in scattered
rural
areas. And so provision of utilities to those areas is a lot more expensive than would be, for example, the average for a European setup, for example.
So it's infrastructure.
Infrastructure is the first hurdle that we need to deal with. The other one, of course, is skills development for our young people and indeed for our population, because there's a lot of usage gap services are available, but people, on account of either the price point or inability to use the gadgets, are still shy.
Literacy.
Yeah, still shy from using these gadgets. So there are myriad reasons that, from a policy and regulatory perspective, we need to deal with.
And as part of your experience, would you say we're making a good progress, or it could be faster?
I think there's progress, but it could be faster. It could be faster. We've seen growth rates in ICT, especially from the Asia Pacific continent, that more or less shares the same sort of developing country status like Africa. We've seen growth rates that are very high, and I think we can leapfrog certain of our challenges to, mount serious connectivity programs, just as the Southeast Asia has done. And it comes from, robust policy initiatives by government, working, of course, together with the private sector.
So private-public sector relationship is very important to drive it.
Right.
All right. Thank you very much.
My
Thanks,
pleasure.
Vincent.
My pleasure.
It was TechAfrica News. You can find more on techafricanews.com.